Hello, everyone. Welcome. I hope you're doing okay. I'm kind of not. My mental health has kind of been in the pooper lately, but I'm here recording and hopefully I've upped my lighting game a little bit. I just figured out how to do a manual white balance on this camera, so hopefully it looks a little bit better, I hope. I don't know. I'm not very good at this, so we're just trying. Doing my best. Hey, we're promoting safety and empowerment over here! My apologies to all New Yorkers and fans of Midnight Cowboy. Anywho, welcome. I'm Kim Neely. This is the Trauma Informed SLP. Here I am on this here YouTube. I'm trying to. I'm neurodivergent, multiply neurodivergent, really, but AUDHD is probably the most apt descriptor for my flavor of neurodivergency. And I'm also a trained speech language pathologist in the United States, and I have training and a lot of research that I kind of fell into a hyperfixation hole on trauma-informed care, basically. And one of the things that helps me do is to understand other people a lot better, especially when it comes to people's behaviors and reactions to things that have always been a mystery to my neurodivergent brain. So here I want to use my trauma-informed perspective to kind of unpack things and talk through, like, essentially helping everyone to understand each other better, maybe get a little more compassion for each other, and, like, you know, hopefully start to build safe communities and heal and that kind of stuff, essentially, is what I'm doing here. And today I'm going to do some, or I'm going to do at least one, if I have time, I'll do more, reaction videos, essentially. So commentary video, haha, which, you know, shameless reason is I think these sort of things do seem like the algorithm seems to like them. So that's somewhat helpful, but also in terms of growing the channel and whatnot. But also, I do personally find reaction videos to be helpful for when I'm introduced to new concepts. Sometimes it's helpful to hear somebody talk through it, like in a real life application kind of a way. And my personal algorithm has fed me a few videos that I'm like, hey, maybe, and actually one came from Reddit. So one is just subreddit that I subscribe to. But yeah, I've been fed some videos. I'm like, hey, these might be good things to talk about, like the trauma-informed perspective on these things. Okay. This particular video, what we're going to talk about today, I found it on the Do We Know Them subreddit. I don't know if you know that one, but Do We Know Them is a podcast. It's on YouTube. I'm a little obsessed with it. I've been watching and rewatching so many of their videos. I don't think Lily or Jesse will ever know I exist, but if you do, hi Lily and Jesse, love you guys, love you girlies. I guess I am a girly kind of, although I'm agender. So, but I kind of like they use girly in a very non-gender way. They're fine with anyone being a girly, which is kind of nice. In real life, the people saying girly are not the kind of people I would hang out with or would really welcome me very much in their spaces. So, with my little queer oddness and my neurodivergencies and my true, honest failure to mask most of the time in my life. And I would call myself very weird. And I like to reclaim weird because that's always been an insult. So I'm reclaiming that. When I call myself weird, I mean, like, heck yeah, I'm weird. What of it?
What of it?
That's a scripting slight reference to a Catherine Tate skit.
Well, Father.
Did you hear about our John? He's a gay man now. Okay, anyway, the video today that I want to react to is one of the most pristine examples of someone using trauma as an excuse, their own personal trauma as an excuse to cause harm to others, rather than just using it as an explanation, but then also like changing their behavior. You know what I mean? So I like to say trauma is an explanation. It's not an excuse, right? And unhealed trauma tends to beget more trauma, meaning you'll do things, you'll say things, you'll react in ways that causes harm to other people, that is traumatizing and or re-traumatizing toward others. So this is a person who, my understanding, I believe she actually introduces herself a fair amount. I don't know her name. I don't know who she is really. She's not on any of my socials. I don't know who this person is, but she is a woman in London who crowdsourced or crowdfunded essentially money to open a women's only gym. And at the time she was accepting money, initially she was saying it's going to be trans inclusive, of course. People are like, trans women included. And she's like, of course, it's going to be a safe space for all women, kind of a thing. And I guess she's backtracked on that. So let's go ahead and get started, because I do think she explains a fair amount of that herself. So we're going to go ahead and get started on this, and I'll let her go ahead and, kind of start introducing herself here a little bit. So here we go.
And for anyone that doesn't know what I'm talking about, essentially I posted a video and I said that my women's only gym, the Girl Spot, will be operating as a single sex space. So it'll be female only. So at this current time, it won't be trans inclusive. And I want to preface and say that this decision was not made lightly. It took me 4 years to make this decision, and I spent a great deal of time speaking to trans women. I spoke to charities, I spoke to Muslim women, I spoke to so many different communities about this topic.
What did they say? What did the trans community say when you spoke to them? I don't know. She never actually gets to that. I'm probably not going to show the whole video because it's 5 minutes, but she does repeat herself a good amount. But that is one of the first things that pops into my head is she said, I spoke to all these different communities to make this decision. And what did they say though? What was their input? What input did you ignore? And what input did you act on? Because that tells us a lot about a person's values, right? If they're given input and they either allow that input to change their mind or to grow from that input or to have more understanding or compassion for a community, or if they ignore the input that doesn't align with their own personal beliefs and values.
People are saying that I'm transphobic. I thoroughly researched. I seeked legal advice. I spoke to communities. I spoke to trans women themselves, which I found very important to do so, to see how to navigate all of this because I am not trans. So obviously the decision to make it was not based on excluding any individuals. It wasn't based on malice, nothing of the sort. The decision was based on the simple fact that I have been sexually assaulted inside of a gym. That is why I stand here as a women's only gym owner. I was sexually assaulted inside of a gym, which means a lot of trauma and a lot of emotion and well-being is behind this project. This is not just a gym. So many of the women that are coming to my women's only gym is because they have also been sexually assaulted or sexually harassed or faced gym intimidation inside mixed gyms and faced that by men. So it's very important to know that this was not an easy decision. I didn't just wake up. I didn't just say, oh, no trans women allowed. I've really thought this through. And when I made that tweet, in 2021 about being trans inclusive, I had just started this project. I was 21 years old, or 20 years old actually at the time. And what the Girl Spot meant then is not what the Girl Spot means now. And that is why I said in my video that I'm labeling it as a single sex space and it'll be female only because I want to do so many classes around self-defense so that women can defend themselves against men. So that boxing and Muay Thai is so incredibly important at the Girl Spot. And I want to do classes on PCOS and hormone imbalances. And
having classes on self-defense and on hormones and stuff does not mean you have to exclude trans women or even trans men from that space. That's not what that means. If a trans person is on hormone treatment, they have their own experiences with hormones that they're doing that's going on. Quite frankly, I'm going to be totally honest here. If cis people would listen to trans people about hormones and what they do to people's their mental state, their emotional state, their sex drive and stuff, that whole women from Mars, men from Venus stuff would just hold no water. It's the hormones make such a difference. And honestly, I find it so enlightening. And cis people should be listening to trans people when it comes to the difference the hormones make. First off, second off, it doesn't exclude trans people. You can still hold classes. That's not saying literally you're not. I mean, I'm assuming this isn't if you sign up for the gym, you have to join the classes, right? When I go to rock climbing, sometimes they have yoga classes and stuff, but I might not choose to do the yoga class. I might just do the gym thing that I normally do. You know what I mean? You don't have to exclude people just because you're going to run classes for certain things. That seems to be a strange thing. And I'm not sure. I'm still waiting for a sense of what has changed in 4 years that has made her go from, of course, trans women are included to absolutely not. I don't know what happened in there. It is absolutely atrocious what happened to her. Absolutely atrocious. The assault and all of that is completely atrocious. But it sounds like the assault was, just for a timeline purpose, sounds like the assault preceded her desire to open this gym. So the tweet that said she was going to make it inclusive for trans women was after that experience. So I'm not sure what shifted. That's what I'm kind of waiting on, waiting to hear that.
And I so strongly believe that everybody deserves a safe space. Like, if you are a true, authentic follower of mine, you know that I am not transphobic. You know how much I stand for safe spaces for everyone.
That's giving the feeling of she's for safe spaces for everyone, but not her spaces, right? Safe spaces, but go create it on your own. You're not welcome in my safe spaces. That's the vibe. As an agender person, this is the vibe I'm getting. Like, I'm honestly getting kind of upset listening to her talk. And as an agender person, I'm like, it shouldn't freaking matter. I know that based off of how I look, I would be welcome in that gym. I got big hips, big boobs, curvy body. I might get some like people judging me for my weight. That would probably happen in a gym. But like, I would not be unwelcome in a women's gym because when people see me, they think woman. But my dysphoria tends to come from being treated like a woman. I like to just be treated like just a person. Okay. I'm a person wearing a feminine skin suit. All right. Like that's how I like to be seen, ideally, which is unlikely to happen most of the time. But it upsets me. And it upsets me because I mean, people clocked it in the comments a lot too, where it's like, you're literally saying trans women aren't women. That's the message she's giving through this whole thing. And that is the foundational thought behind transphobic people, especially people out there doing a lot of political rhetoric and a lot of targeting around anti-trans stuff and keeping them out, and women are so unsafe in bathrooms, the thought that trans women somehow would be predatory, right? They're conflating trans women with male predators and incels and, people who do assaults and stuff. But trans women aren't those people. First off, I guess you could be theoretically, but trans women is a different group. We're talking about a different group of people. If we're looking at statistics, this is a different group of people, okay? And they're women. That's the whole point of transgenderism, is like, they are the gender. They always have been that gender, okay? Right? Like, regardless of the physical appearance, regardless of the body, you are the gender you feel you are. I don't feel like I am a gender. That's why I'm agender.
I care so much about safe spaces, and I believe trans women deserve and need their own safe spaces,
So that's right there basically her saying, like, trans women deserve safe spaces, but not women's spaces. They're not welcome in women's spaces, right? She's having a women-only gym, not a trans women inclusive gym, which is literally just saying, if you're cis, you're actually a woman. That's by making that distinction, you're automatically saying trans women are not women, okay? Like, if you have an apple-only space, okay, and you have an orange that identifies as an apple, I don't know. This is a bad analogy. I don't know where I'm going with that. Never mind. I'm going to erase that analogy. I don't think that it's going to work. When I think about it, I'm like, wait a second. No, that's not going to work. I don't know. What would it be? I don't know what the analogy would be, but basically, okay. Yeah. Or I guess, yeah, you have a fruit-only gym. There we go. That's what we'll say. We have a fruit-only gym where she's thinking just apples, but an orange walks in and she's saying, you're not actually a fruit, orange. You're a different thing. You're not a fruit. Right? Go create an orange only gym is kind of what she's saying. There we go. I got to the analogy. I got it. Fruits and vegetables. Just had to go up a level from categories there to get to the right one. Okay. And so that's a pretty big issue there. And also, like, how do you police this? It has to be based off physical looks, which is the thing that drives me crazy as an agender person. Like, I know for a fact, if I visit the UK and I want to visit her gym and I don't say anything about my identified agenderism, no one's going to say anything about me. I can go into any female, like, woman's only bathroom and nobody blinks an eye at it because I'm giving female. Like, that's my physical form. I give female, okay? Especially with the boobs. I got the heavy boobs from, like, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
I got them heavy boobs, dance like dying stars. I got them heavy boobs, I can't run real far.
That's a me, okay? So it's like nobody doubts it, you know? If I just don't say anything, I'm perceived that way, right? And yeah, and I have a uterus, I have menstruation, I have extremely painful menstruation, and the uterus and I are not on good terms. We've never gotten along very well. Yeah, gender and body are different things, but you're going to police the bodies. That's what's going to happen, right? It's going to be based off of how people look. If a cis woman who happens to look too manly comes in, they're probably not going to be welcome. You know what I mean? It's like, Julia Child, okay? If Julia Child were alive today, especially as she got older, all right? How much would she be rejected from these spaces? I've got to wonder. Somebody out there must, because she was like 6 foot something tall. She was a really tall lady, as far as I know, cis woman, seemed to be cis straight woman. And she had that probably very large vocal tract that led to that, she had that sound with her voice, Julia Child, But like, I'm pretty sure she, given her height and everything, especially she got older and her voice sounding kind of different and off, she probably would have been guessed to have been trans, and people would have been kicking Julia Child out of bathrooms and gyms. Okay. Like, folks, come on. You know what I mean? Like, you can't say they wouldn't, I don't know. It's just, it's absurd. You're policing people's looks at that point. You're policing their looks unless you're actually forcing people to do like a genital inspection, which also doesn't work if someone's had surgery. So many issues.
A lot of people said, why don't you have trans only hours or a trans space inside of the gym? Like, the gym is tiny. It's a very boutique.
Honestly, the trans only hours, what's up with that? I understand the gym being tiny and you might not have the space to do a separate thing, but like, that's a really good idea. Trans friendly hours, maybe not trans only, but you could do trans friendly hours for all the women who don't mind, for all the cis women out there who do include trans women in their category of women. And maybe they want to come and bring their trans friend over to work out with them, right? Like, this is also assuming that somehow cis women don't want trans women around, which is, I think, a very erroneous assumption. It's an assumption she's making about herself, which is why people are clocking it as transphobic. But then she doesn't like that term because it sounds probably a bit like a slur to her. It sounds like that means I don't like people. This is more than a liking the person. This is more than I don't mind who you are as a person. This is a systemic thing. And this is where like allyship becomes performative when people say like, I'm not transphobic. I think it's great for people to be whatever gender they want to be. But, right? The but comes in, the comma, the however part comes in. And that's where we end up with the systemic issues of people passing laws, people having gender affirming care withdrawn, people passing, policies that prevent transgender people from accessing things that they should have the right to access. You know what I mean? It goes to them being vilified, and it makes them a target for violence, which is the biggest piece of this. I mean, not only just the insult of being excluded, it's not just an exclusionary issue. It's the fact that that attitude of trans women not being women is directly feeds into people's justification of violence, be it physical violence, emotional violence, assault, whatever it may be against trans people in general. Okay? This is why they have targets on their back. And this is why them going out there and creating their own safe spaces, those spaces might not be so safe for them if they try to create them. They're going to probably be targeted even above and beyond a women's only gym. Maybe not. Maybe it'll be equally targeted because I think her gym has had bomb threats and stuff. And people, this is the world we're in today, which is just absolutely horrific. But it's like a trans gym would have a similar thing going on. Okay. Okay. Anyway, I guess I should just keep playing, but I'm starting to rant.
Gym and I'm very limited, and I don't have the capital and all of that. So whilst I understand.
And they don't have the capital, I think. I'm going to guess that's supposed to be toward the trans only hours. Like she can't take the hit of having not enough people to fill the gym, I guess, for those hours. You can have it be trans inclusive hours. You could have it be like, you know, cis only hours if you want for, I guess, if you want. The snarky way I would say that is if you want the transphobes to have their own safe space, you could do it that way, I suppose. But it's like you're assuming that other cis women won't want to come because trans women might be there on the off chance they might be there. So you're assuming that the gym won't be filled because I think she's making an assumption that a lot of cis women think the way she thinks, you know?
The anger around backtracking in terms of what I said in 2021, like I do feel bad about that. But the reason why it is female only is so incredibly important.
The but right there is the problem. Okay. You feel bad about the backtracking. Okay. And then say it with your chest. Okay. Say it with your chest that this is a cis woman only space. She's not even using cis woman. She's using women and trans women, automatically excluding them from the category woman in her mind. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, I cannot help but hear this as an agender person as, oh, you don't like transgender people. That is what I'm getting. That's my vibe. Oh, you don't really like non-binary, I'm guessing either. You know, I'm thinking anyone not gender binary, non-gender binary people are not going to be welcome there. And trans people, you know, I would bet a trans woman could probably be in there if she passes. If she looks like a cis woman, they probably wouldn't say anything. So what might be more, maybe it's more problematic if trans women go in there and they haven't done major transition and they don't pass. Maybe that's what's triggering. I don't know.
I want so many girls and women to feel so safe. Like this is very much coming from a trauma and assault perspective. Like I said, like I don't know if I would be standing here today if I wasn't sexually assaulted inside of a gym. Like that was my driving force, and like I feel like so many people have looked over it, which really upsets me also, because like that was such a huge thing, you know, like any woman that experiences sexual assault in any degree is awful. And I'm getting so much hate and so much comments and everything. And I feel like nobody's really understanding that I've been a victim of insane, like harassment, intimidation, assault, and it's been awful.
Being assaulted is absolutely horrific. That makes me sick to my stomach. The fact that she went to a gym to work out and was assaulted. That is disgusting and horrible. And also, I'm not doing the button, however, hey. And also, trans women get assaulted. Trans men get assaulted. Non-binary people get assaulted. Okay? Like, which trans is an umbrella term. You can include all gender expression in there that's not the binary. It pretty much, trans as an umbrella term means you don't identify as the gender you were born. You were identified at birth as. So it is atrocious that she got assaulted, but was it a trans person that did the assault? Or not? And also, even if it was a trans person who did the assault, that still doesn't excuse excluding an entire group of people for your own personal trigger. This is what I mean. It is an explanation. Yes, it makes sense that you want to dial back things, right? Like, you know what would make sense to me is if she was saying something like, I made that comment of it being trans inclusive and then, comma, however, but, right? Like, I noticed the other day a trans woman walked down the street and my brain immediately went to, this is a man, right? My brain saw them as a man and I started having a reaction that was the trauma trigger. I started feeling incredibly unsafe. I needed to run away. I needed to hide. And in my own gym, I don't want to have to deal with that trigger. Okay. Maybe that could be some place to go with this explanation. But even then, here's my thing, especially from a trauma healing perspective. When you recognize a trigger like that, if you go, I see a trans woman who doesn't really pass, and I think there's a man infiltrating my safe space, and I suddenly feel triggered and very unsafe. If you are consciously aware of that trigger, that is a trauma trigger, it is an emotional memory from the assault, Your brain is thinking, oh no, unsafe here in a gym with someone who physically appears to be what you would call a man, okay? Or what her trauma would consider a man, okay? And so like, that makes sense that she might have that reaction and like, get him out of my space. I don't want him here and I'm the owner and I can push him out, right? However, if you have like the awareness that you're having a trauma trigger is the first step in starting to heal from them, because the answer is not go with that trauma trigger and assume that you're completely justified in denying that person's actual gender, in denying their access to a safe space, in denying their identity completely, you know, and telling them they're unwelcome, which trans people are targets right now, especially in the UK and definitely in the US. Like, trans communities are under extreme threat and people are very frightened and it's triggering for them, right? So her action of like, let's say I push this person out of my gym, instead of feeling justified because of the trigger, the part of healing would be regulating, meaning calming yourself down from that trigger, realizing you're actually safe, right? Kind of deprogramming the trigger, maybe going back to your therapist, which hopefully she has access to, a good therapist, and do sort of that deprogramming work, the detriggering work that needs to be done so that she can remain more calm in those situations. And that when she gets that rush of fear, that feeling of a threat, she can go, wait a second, am I actually under threat, right? And until she can actually handle those situations, maybe she's not the one to handle when trans women come into the gym. Maybe she needs a front desk person to like, you know, tell her it's okay. Like, you go to the office, you'll be fine. We're going to keep monitoring. It'll be fine. You know what I mean? Maybe the crowdsource people who funded this would not mind donating a little extra for there to be security on site for just in case somebody sneaks in with malicious intent, right? Just in case there's like somebody sneaking in. It won't be a trans woman. It would likely be a predator who's trying to costume as something to get access, right? Maybe that would be the answer, you know, and seeing if people would benefit from that just so they can have people monitoring just to make sure, you know, like there's so many different ways of going about this, but she is trying to excuse the behavior. She assumes that people having a problem with this means they don't understand the level of trauma she has. That's not necessarily the case, okay? People who are commenting could have the exact same situation, the exact same type of trauma. Maybe they've had a lot of healing from the trauma. Maybe the transgender person has had a lot of trauma, right? You don't know if that transgender woman has been sexually assaulted. You have no idea if that's why she's there for a safe space for a similar reason, right? And that's the whole point. If you get triggered, the point is you have to do the work to calm yourself down and realize it's not the same situation. Your trauma is telling you you're under threat and it's the same situation, but that is the trauma. That's not the actual situation right now. Part of healing from that trauma is understanding that and being able to calm yourself enough that you can think rationally and objectively about the situation and react hopefully in an inclusive, appropriate manner, right, to the situation. It doesn't mean let people get away with whatever. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it also definitely doesn't mean harm someone of a marginalized group who already feel very under threat currently in the world because you feel justified because you felt unsafe, right? You're feeling unsafe means I can therefore make the trans community feel unsafe in my space. See how it's like trauma begetting more trauma, you know? Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like you're just feeding into the systemic, all those barriers and all the bias and all the oppression and the actual issues they're having. Because listen, the other thing you have to realize is that, you know, I just did a quick Google search for this reaction. And listen, I found an article in The Guardian from 2022 that said trans people are twice as likely to be victims of crime in England and Wales. Okay. So 28% of trans people experience crime compared to 14% of cis people. All right. So that is from the Office for National Statistics, ONS. Okay. 1 in 4 trans people experienced crime in the year ending March 2020, compared to 14% of people whose gender identity is the same as the sex they were registered at birth. Okay? That's what I'm talking about. You can't just like assume, right? This is part of being trauma informed, is like, you honestly essentially start to assume people have probably likely had trauma rather than not. That tends to be the actual, like, honestly, you tend to think, yeah, people have probably had trauma rather than not. So when you react in a way in response to your own trauma, it is not very trauma informed, nor very inclusive, nor very healing for anyone if you therefore use it as an excuse to cause emotional upset and or re-traumatization in someone else. Okay? You can bet that trans women, trans men, trans people in general have had effects of trauma. Perhaps they haven't had a primary trauma, maybe, but they've had secondary, because they hear about people talking about them and their group and their community as being these horrible people who are like perpetrators and criminals, you know? And it's like just being completely dehumanized that way for whatever agenda people have, mostly because they're different and people don't understand it. I also found this stonewall.org.uk. I'm going to put it on reader so that we don't have pop-ups. So I also found this one where the LGBT in Britain Trans Report 2018, 1 in 8, it says 1 in 8 trans employees, 12% have been physically attacked by a colleague or customer in the last year. Half of trans people, 41%, have hidden their identity at work for fear of discrimination. A quarter of trans people have experienced homelessness. Okay. That is crazy. 48% don't feel comfortable using public toilets through fear of discrimination or harassment. So that's nearly half. Nearly half of trans people are walking around cities being like, I don't know where I can go to the bathroom. Where can I go to the bathroom? I can't go to the bathroom here. This won't work. I need to find another bathroom, you know, on their day-to-day life. Okay. Someone here said, I get shouted at every single time I leave my house and threatened at least once a week. Willow in Wales says, we are constantly questioned on our existence, treated hostilely and ridiculed in the name of debate, exposed to hate and criticism in the media. Okay. Laughed at, ridiculed, becoming the butt of jokes that normally gender me as a woman. So I understand it being upsetting to hear people call you transphobic, but the actions say you're transphobic. Even if the source is trauma, by using your trauma as an excuse to be part of the majority people out there who are excluding trans people, dehumanizing trans people, confounding them with predators, confounding them with criminals, confounding them with people who have nefarious motivations and nefarious, motivations, but like, what is it called when people have like a plan in place to do something, you know? I can't think of the word, but yeah, you're confounding it with all of that. And so like the actions are transphobic. Even if, as far as you know, as far as you're concerned, the trigger was trauma for you, your actions of exclusion is still a transphobic action. And it's based in a confounding of trans women with male predators. Trans women aren't male predators. Trans women are women. Okay. Also, other question would be trans men. Okay. Like if Jamie Dodger shows up there, Jamie, I love him. Also, by the way, like, Jamie keeps posting these thirst traps, and it's like, I'm also on the asexual spectrum, so it's like, why do you keep breaking my brain like that, Jamie? Like, quit breaking our demisexual brains by being amazing and fabulous and also looking amazing. Like, just cut it out. Cut it out. Rude. Okay, anyway, I mean, if he rolled up there, you gonna let him in? He's a trans man? You gonna let him in? Bet not. You might have let him in if he was really early in his transition, though. You might not have clocked it as you're actually letting a man in to your inclusive gym. What about intersex people? Also, does it just depend on their appearance? How far they appear one way or the other? Is that what we're really going on here? Is it just based off of your own trauma trigger? Is that actually going to be the metric by which people are welcomed in? If you look masculine enough that you set off the trigger, you're not welcome? Is that what we're saying? Because that's the only thing that makes sense. Okay, especially in London. London is an incredibly diverse city.
say, like, this was not a light decision. This was not me plucking this out of thin air or wanting to exclude trans women. I've spoken to so many. I even spoke to charities, you know, so.
Once again, what did they say? If you spoke to the trans women, if you spoke to the charities and the organizations, what did the organizations say? Because I highly doubt they said, oh yeah, it totally makes sense if you're just triggered by that. That makes sense. Yeah, we shouldn't be in your space then. Is that what they said? Somehow I kind of doubt it because she's not including what they said. They weren't like, they said this is a good idea and this is fine. So speaking with people doesn't really matter if you're not going to change your actions based off of what you hear. Okay? Seeking other opinions that counter yours and then ignoring them, you might as well not seek them, because that's even more rejection. That's like double rejection. You attempted to understand and then you were just like, nah, don't need to understand it. That's not great, okay? But that is a really good example, because I think this is something that a lot of people get muddied when they think about, like, I've had trauma, therefore I can exclude people from my life or whatever. Yeah, I mean, look, she doesn't have to be friends with trans people. She doesn't have to, like, go at a dinner party at a trans person's house. Like, okay, all right, if that's going to be triggering, then yeah, okay. I guess you don't really have to do that on an interpersonal, personal level. But when you're opening a public space, a business that you want people to come to, because you want memberships and, you know, and people paying like daily passes and stuff, I'm assuming, right? So it's like, if you're going to open this business and then make an exclusion for trans people, you got to expect people are going to be hurt by that. People who are true allies to trans people are going to be hurt by that and insulted by that. You've excluded cis women who support trans people. They're probably not going to want to go. Right? So you've actually reduced the number of people who are interested in coming to your gym and would actually consider this a safe space for themselves. Because, like I said, you could have a cis person who thought, oh, this will be great. Me and my trans friend, we've been wanting to work out together, but everywhere we go, she gets harassed. So it would be amazing to come to a gym that's inclusive and safe and we can both work out together. You just excluded that situation from happening. You know what I mean? And the other thing I want to say to this is, listen, we've all heard about the cycle of abuse in families, right? Where, like, parents, you know, kids who are abused grow up, and if they don't heal or deal with that abuse very well, they end up abusing their own kids. This is why that happens. That happens primarily because of unhealed trauma, because of kids triggering trauma and the parents being in the position of power, repeating the behaviors they saw their parents do, repeating what was done to them because of the trigger and because of the switch in power differential. And as a business owner, you now have power. You're not an assault victim as a business owner. I mean, you are, like, people can be both, but you have a power differential here. Now you have the power to exclude people from what should be a publicly accessible space if they pay, you know, their membership pass or whatever, right? So you're automatically doing that. And that is the problem here. Okay. So in the moment of the trauma, yes, you're a victim. It is horrible. It is horrific. Like I said, it makes me feel sick and awful. And I really hope she has an extraordinary amount of support around her and a really good therapist and is doing a lot of healing from that. I truly hope. But if you take the trauma as a reason to create the world in the image that you wish in order to feel safe, if you expect to control the world for your own safety, if you expect to control your own business even for your own safety, and that means excluding a marginalized group that is under threat and that is in danger most of the time nowadays, yeah, your actions are saying you are biased. You are biased and you're discriminating. And that's just the facts. You can say you're not, you can say it with the words, but your actions don't match the words. So it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if that's what you say. If you want to not be transphobic, if you want to actually be an ally to trans people, you have to not be discriminatory against them. regardless of your own trauma history and your own trauma triggers. Just like if a parent doesn't want to repeat the cycle of abuse with their own kids, they have to heal from it. They have to learn other ways of reacting as a parent, and they have to do the work to deprogram those triggers and to be able to calm their body and to be able to assess and react differently, which is exactly what any person who's been through trauma has to learn how to do. And it can be incredibly difficult. And in the process of healing, maybe you're not the person. If a trans woman walks in and she doesn't pass, right? She's not passing as a cis woman. You get triggered by that. Maybe you're not the person. Maybe it's time for you to go do some paperwork in the office and do your calming down and relaxing and reminding yourself that you are still safe, that this trans woman is a woman and you are safe and people here are safe. You know, that would be the way to respond. This would have gone down a lot better if it would have been, I'm genuinely thinking of doing this, or maybe I did kick somebody out or whatever it may be, whatever the story is. But then I realized it's because my trauma isn't healed enough and I need to do more work to heal from my trauma. So in the meantime, we'll have trans inclusive hours and my front desk, and I will probably be in the office somewhere in the back, excluding myself just in case with my triggers, I react in a way that is not very kind nor respectful toward trans people. That would have been a very different conversation, I think. Reactions would have been very different to this. So this is just an example. I hope this helps a little bit to unpack that, because this definitely, you can't say this didn't harm the trans community. You can't say you didn't re-traumatize trans community because of your own trauma. And if all we think is trauma is an excuse, that means we all just get to be complete dicks to each other all the time, which quite frankly is already the state of a lot of the world right now. And I think it's time for us to do some healing and to realize that we can't use trauma as an excuse to just continue to treat other people horribly. You know? That would be really nice. So hopefully this helped. If it did, let me know in the comments below. If you have other thoughts on this, let me know in the comments below. If you are transphobic or you are insulting people, don't comment below. Also, this isn't the, what are you still doing here? You just want to tick yourself off? Why are you here? Go somewhere else. Go vent somewhere else. Okay? Like whatever. I will delete comments if they're incredibly transphobic and incredibly mean. And if it's only mildly transphobic, you're going to get a Terry Pratchett quote, because that's how I respond to trolls. So, all right. Anyway, with all that said, in the hopes of connecting with each other, I hope you all to have a nice healing, comfortable, take care of yourself kind of time, and in the effort of using our weirdness for good to connect each other to ourselves and create a lovely, safe, inclusive community of weirdos. Affectionate. I wish you all to keep it weird. Until next time, bye. Side note, I also want to say, I found these really cool little chocobo earrings that say Quay. So Final Fantasy, sup? Any Final Fantasy fans? Yeah, Quay.